What is up? Welcome to Viseland. We finally did it. We made it through the 2020 NBA draft. It happened. Mikey, how does it feel to be done with this draft?
It feels pretty fantastic. 15 picks in, no trades. Like, that was definitely out of the blue. And yeah, it was nonetheless eventful. Like, there were a few eventful days before that with the trades that we talked about last time. And very lucky that we didn't bring up the trade that happened immediately after we finished recording, or like while we were recording, about the Bogdanovic sign-in trade that ended up
Not happening. Yeah. So that's why
tampering, or it was yeah, very gray area, and he just ended up doing something else. But yeah, it was a fun draft. Definitely some interesting picks, and it's been an interesting offseason as well.
Yeah, no, and I think it was a fast start to like the free agency, and I think the draft, like the lottery was pretty much locked in, and then after that it was like trades. Let's start moving and doing some things.
Yeah, for sure.
But I don't think there's nothing like landscape altering on any of the trades, but definitely just.
I think a few of them were pretty big. But yeah, I guess you're talking about like not during the draft, but around the draft, and yeah, there are definitely things that I feel are going to happen this year that are going to be possibly quite different from last year. And there are a few teams that definitely improved, and a few teams that we think are likely in the rebuilding process or in the Cade Cunningham conversation, which is soon to come when we focus on the 2021 NBA draft, which we will very soon, as college basketball is starting up tomorrow. Already a few games postponed and canceled.
Yeah. Tennessee shut down their basketball program.
Has COVID-19. Florida shut down for a while. Oregon had to postpone their game because Eastern Washington possibly didn't have enough scholarship players to play, which makes a lot of sense because we played Eastern Washington last year and it was a disaster with a few scholarship players missing, but still, I guess, most of their team. And yeah, it's going to be a really interesting season. The Oregon schedule, and I think a lot of
Pac-12 just came out today.
A deep conference schedule, but yeah, the non-conference games are going to be shortened, and I guess we don't even really know what the NCAA tournament's going to look like. But yeah, nonetheless, tomorrow we'll have college basketball and we'll have some new things going on there. But we want to just kind of recap the NBA draft and talk about the recent free agent signings and trades by all of the different NBA teams.
Yeah, no, that's seems like a good time. And like the funny part is we're the draft, free agency, and pretty much I think training camp starts in about a week and some change.
Really? Yeah.
So, super short.
I thought like they were set to play preseason games December 1st, which would mean like training camp would really start soon.
Yeah,
I know the NBA is supposed to restart December 22nd. And I think that would be like regular season games.
So, no, totally. I think that's regular season. I think it's December 1st is training camp, so I don't know how.
Maybe they'll just play really shortened preseason schedule, probably like 3 games or so. I guess kind of like they did in the bubble. But yeah, let's just move on, and we're just going to go by alphabetical order and kind of give a breakdown of how we felt about the draft, some of the free agent signings by various teams, and some of the trades that they've made to kind of round out the roster. And then we're going to say whether we feel they'll be in the same place, in a better place, or if they're rebuilding or somehow got worse. So yeah, we're going to kind of give that as our scale of grades. As much as you can grade the NBA draft based on what you feel about your board, we're just going to kind of give an off-season outlook. And of course, we'll mention whether we felt they drafted well and have signed some players to help their team. But yeah, or had good use of the salary cap space that they have.
Sounds good. We're going to start it off, obviously, with Atlanta.
That's the first letter.
And it's an A. We're also going to go through the alphabet. Yeah. So Atlanta starts off. They just you mentioned it just a couple seconds ago about Bogdan. That's where he ends up. He signs an offer sheet. Sacramento doesn't match. So here he is on Atlanta.
Yeah.
That was a big addition as of the date of this recording.
Yeah. A guy who killed it in the Rising Stars game. And you're thinking that, so with their two major signings, they signed Danilo Gallinari and Bogdan Bogdanovic. They probably overpay, at least for Bogdan, a tad, but it was around market, and Sacramento not interested in matching, kind of wanted to move on with their current core. And Danilo was a guy that seemed to be wanted by quite a few different teams, but probably took the best offer on the table, which is around $20 million per year, and I think over at least 3 years. And he, so it's basically like a step up for Atlanta in those two kind of wing positions. I guess you ultimately would love Danilo to play the 4, but it seems like he's likely going to play on the wing at least a tad. And then as far as the draft went, they ended up drafting Onyeka Okongwu. The day of the draft, there were rumors about Onyeka having a toe injury that could sideline him for a little while, but obviously wasn't hugely expected to have him dip to a really low point in the draft. And he does, honestly, Onyeka looks like a guy who will eventually fit a really nice role for this team. But at the same time, the way the roster is currently constructed, they have John Collins and Capella, and both of those guys seem to excel being a 5. And Onyeka doesn't seem like he is necessarily he did play next to a big in college, but he excelled as being a center, and that seems to be his best NBA position. So they're probably going to have to do something there. As far as their other draft pick, they chose Skylar Mays. He's another kind of wing guy, good shooter, pretty decent athlete as well, but probably not expected to be a huge part in their rotation or anything like that. Somebody they'll bring along pretty slowly, even though he was a senior at LSU. And then their other signings were they signed Rajon Rondo and they signed Chris Dunn. So they get a couple guys who are basically point guards who maybe could help Trae Young play a bit more off ball and could play with Trae Young as well. Both of them, Rondo, of course, with the insane wingspan to possibly move up and guard a 2, and Chris Dunn, known for his defense, known as a bigger guard as well. So, yeah, it's interesting. I feel like Atlanta got a little bit better, but was it maybe the best use of their cap? It might have been just all that they had. But and the thing is that they kind of went all in with these guys in that they even signed. I don't know. I'm pretty sure they're player options, but I don't think they're team options with Chris Dunn and Rajon Rondo, and of course signing Bogdan Bogdanovic and Danilo to longer term contracts. So yeah, it's an interesting call, but yeah, I feel like Atlanta at least got a little bit more competitive and definitely got quite a bit deeper by adding all of these guys.
No, yeah, I totally agree. I think they did get better. Are they going to be at the top of the Eastern Conference? No, probably not. But I think they'll at least be possible playoff contention because Trae Young is, he's your guy, and now you got a couple other people that can kind of score. Rondo.
Yeah, the offense looks fantastic.
Yeah.
They have a lot of guys that can get buckets. It's going to be about that defense. Onyeka, obviously, as a draft pick.
If healthy.
You're expecting to do good things defensively. Clint pretty much traded from Houston because you kind of worried about him going deeper into the playoffs, what he would provide defensively, but still a decent defender in his own right. And yeah, it's going to be really interesting because I'm pretty sure John Collins wants money, and he's very soon going to be in line for an extension. Yeah, it's I have a feeling Atlanta's not done making some deals. They, of course, have guys like DeAndre Hunter and Cam Reddish from last year. Kevin Huerter, another player who can definitely provide you some good rotation minutes. But yeah, they're pretty chock full right now, and I wouldn't be surprised if they at least tried to make a run and get like a bigger name. I'm not exactly sure who would be out there, but yeah, they at least do have some assets to try and maybe trade for like a good stretch four or somebody like that would fit next to an Onyeka Okongwu, and maybe I'm guessing they want to keep John Collins, but yeah, I'm sure Clint Capella is possibly on the block. But yeah, Atlanta, interesting, and I think they at least got a little bit better for next year and should be more competitive.
Yeah, that I think that's a total trajectory of where they're at. But moving on, we got Boston team finished, pretty strong last year, just short of the finals. Obviously.
From the NBA Finals.
Yeah, so Miami obviously took them some work, but you know what? For the draft, they had 3 first-round picks. They got rid of 1, but you got Aaron Nesmith, 14. They got Peyton Pritchard, 26, and then Jan Madar, 47. And then they're bringing in Tristan Thompson, they're bringing in Jeff Teague, Gordon Hayward out. So what's your take? Especially because Danny Ainge is a frequent multiple pick GM in the draft. He always ends up getting more picks, movies and things around. Like what are your thoughts on how Boston did on draft night?
I felt like they probably traded away the best guy that they picked in Desmond Bain. And I was a little surprised by that. I have to be honest, as much as I like Peyton Pritchard, and while I do think Peyton Pritchard is a very offensively talented player, works incredibly hard, it was pretty surprising to see him pick 26. It was surprising to see Aaron Nesmith picked 14 to Boston. I felt like they maybe could have done a little bit better there also. Word was that Aaron Nesmith might have still had foot issues, and as well as he shot out of his mind in the small sample size he played for Vanderbilt as a sophomore, but didn't shoot that same percentage as a freshman. Look good, and shooting is not his concern. The guy is a good movement shooter and obviously really good off of the ball. But it's just about all those other things, and you kind of wonder where that fits in. But yeah, they drafted 2 guys that can stretch the floor. They sign a guy like Tristan Thompson.
Yeah, I think he gives them some good interior toughness.
Yeah, and he's pretty similar to Daniel Tice. They're 2 of kind of the same guy, a little undersized, but do bring that interior toughness. Yeah, and they obviously still have Robert Williams and hope that maybe he could be that different look center. I think they were kind of probably happy to have a guy like Tristan who could maybe be a bit more of a defensive-minded big as opposed to Enes Kanter, who they had last year. And they also signed Jeff Teague, who will replace Brad Wanamaker and as the backup point guard for Kemba Walker, who I've heard today is going to be out for a while. So yeah, I hope that Kemba Walker comes back in full strength, and that's really key to Boston. I do feel like Boston did not necessarily improve though, and that's obviously they weren't going to pay a long-term contract for Gordon Hayward. They did the right thing and signed Jason Tatum to a long-term max extension because he is their centerpiece of their team. Obviously, the year before they had signed Jaylen Brown for a long-term extension. So they have those 3 guys in Kemba, Jaylen, and Jason Tatum making quite a bit of money. And those are three like all-star level guys, with Jason Tatum being an all NBA level guy.
Yeah.
And yeah, so they have their core, but yeah, it's still, I think the major key is going to be like some of their rookies getting a little bit better, like Grant Williams getting a little bit better. Hopefully maybe getting some more out of some of the guys they had drafted the year before, and like Romeo Langford, Tremont Waters, Carson Edwards. But yeah, they're banking on a lot of youth.
And they also got Taco Fall on the two-way contract.
But they had Taco Fall.
I know they had him on like last year anyway. But
it's like, he's still there.
I know. I wish him the best. He seems like
he's going to be their fourth center, so
yeah,
he is a lot of fun. But and I'm sure he's going to tear it up for me. But he, as fun as it is to have the tallest player in the NBA, I'm not sure he makes up for the issues that they have now. And the fact that, so the guys who kind of like run the team are, so you have like Kemba, obviously, you have Marcus Smart, and then Jason Tatum, his development as a playmaker was just a huge evolution to Boston as a team. And then you have a guy like Jeff Teague, who's not necessarily like the most exciting player, but nonetheless a guy with experience, a guy who at one time was an all-star, has some speed and some playmaking ability as well. But yeah, you still, like, Gordon Hayward was a really big part to what made them such a dangerous team. And losing him.
They got to the conference finals without Gordon Hayward.
Yeah, but he was a huge reason why they
were in that position.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's a big reason why they had a chance to go to the NBA finals. He was not himself. And like, don't get me wrong, we'll mention the Gordon Hayward signing in a little bit, but I think the players that they signed aren't necessarily going to make up for the fact that they lost a guy like Gordon. And you still, I feel, have a few issues with the team. So I don't feel like they're a lot worse, and they're probably like still like a top of the Eastern Conference, like in that top four. But there may have been some teams that surpassed them, and it's going to be about the young guys' improvement, and hopefully Kemba Walker not being out too long as well.
Yeah, I think for them, like they kind of, to me, they stay in the same place a little bit, because I think the Eastern Conference isn't that strong or deep necessarily, so they're already like by default like just maintaining some status quo, like already like up there. I just want the record to show as well, I do not endorse any Peyton Pritchard slander of any kind. So when we could replay this years from now, and I'll be like, no, I stood by Peyton. I believed. Very happy got the first round promise, but I obviously understand the NBA's the NBA. But wish him the best, and I'm very against any slander of any kind for him.
That's great.
It was not
what an impassioned response.
It wasn't the speech I had planned in my head initially, but
yeah, you should have worked on it, Lincoln.
I dig it. Happy for him. Wish him the best in the league, and obviously we will talk a lot about products as the season goes by.
Yeah, for sure.
But moving along, Brooklyn.
No, we're sticking here for a second. So you mentioned Peyton Pritchard, and then you bring up nothing about Yadar and the fact that he was taken in the second round. Tough guy from Israel, likely a stash, but he was an intriguing second round pick, and just a guy who has a lot of toughness, has some ability to get to the basket, to run a team a little bit. So yeah, I thought he was an interesting second round pick. And but otherwise, I kind of stand by the fact that I feel like there might have been some point guards who could have been maybe a little bit more helpful to Boston than Peyton Pritchard. I know that's sacrilegious, and I am rooting for Peyton Pritchard to do very well, but I am going to stand by my draft board and say that there's at least one guy who was drafted a little bit later who I thought might have been a really nice pick for the Celtics there.
Whatever gets through the night.
And then a couple other guys like Desmond Bain, like Xavier Tillman Sr., who both go to the same team. But yeah, we'll move on, and we're going to a team that has they haven't done a ton this offseason so far.
They don't need to. They don't need to do a ton either in Brooklyn. They're kind of locked in with Durant and Kyrie.
Well, yeah, but of course the rumors for James Harden. Yeah, still nothing as far as that goes in terms of any new updates or anything like that. And as we said in our last episode, we felt like maybe there could be possible better offers out there. It seems like Philly's kind of standing pat. So yeah, I'm not sure. Maybe the Nets will have an offer that Houston likes for James Harden, and that will happen, and then it'll just be like that three-headed monster and
crazy
scoring trio. But yeah, right now they drafted Reggie Perry, who was always kind of like an interesting big guy. He actually won the MVP of the U19s a couple summers ago, played for Mississippi State, is like basically a four with some ball skills and passing ability. Kind of, it's not necessarily like what you would think of classically as a stretch, but it has some perimeter ability and a really good frame as well. And then they signed Jeff Green, who did really good things as like a small
doing well in Houston, yeah. And also played with
Kevin Durant as a rookie. Yeah. And then the trade that they did, so they had the 19th pick. They trade that in a three-way deal with the Clippers, and they end up with Landry Shamet, who is been a nice rotation piece for the Clippers, and he is. Brooklyn obviously looking for shooters. They do re-sign Joe Harris to like a really sweet deal.
He got a decent payday.
So they bring back their shooting threat, and then they have a guy like Landry Shamet too, and then the other guy that they trade for, Bruce Brown, just before the draft, and another like nice backup card. So yeah, they have a little bit of guard depth that they acquired. And they have a really I think they're going to be a really fun team.
Yeah, totally. And I think they were kind of even in the bubble were like kind of an exciting with like Karis LeVert and
they were a surprise team. I felt in the bubble.
And that doesn't consider that they have like DeAndre, Kyrie, Kevin Durant not even in attendance. So you're throwing them in this mix. Steve Nash, Mike D'Antoni's going to be assistant, so it's probably again going to be like up tempo.
Amari Stoudemire. Oh, you hadn't heard about that one?
No, I thought he was still playing in Israel. Oh, nice.
Yeah, so they're bringing back all the 7 seconds or less guys.
Yeah, it's great.
Should be a fun style. I expect some Kevin Durant at the 5. I'm expecting some really cool small ball lineups, and they have a lot of guys that can handle the ball. You have like Kyrie Irving, you have Karis LeVert, you have Spencer Dinwiddie. And then the center thing with I'm guessing that obviously Durant and Kyrie are likely going to want DeAndre Jordan. And Jared Allen is somebody who you're going to have to talk about an extension with. I wouldn't be surprised if they end up trading Jared Allen unfairly.
No, totally.
Yeah, we'll see. And obviously, if you have guys like, Spencer Dinwiddie already talking about leaving like ASAP, so he's another possible trade chip. It seems like the trade for Harden isn't out of contention, but so far let's just say their offseason hasn't been hugely inspiring for anything, but they're still obviously going to be better because they have Kevin Durant coming back, and he is somebody who at low seems like a top 10 player in the league. You just wonder how exactly he's going to come back from the Achilles injury, but yeah, he's Kevin Durant and one of the best players of all time. And one of the hardest players to stop in NBA history. You assume he's going to come back and be pretty good and make them a contending team, and they have a lot of good pieces to do it as is, and they have some possible trade chips to get even better. So yeah, we're going to say that they stay the same based on them getting back Kevin Durant and hopefully Kyrie Irving. and looking like a contending team in the Eastern Conference.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. I think Kevin Durant is back. You're contending. Like it just, I have a hard time not seeing him going deep in the playoffs. I mean, it's gonna be pretty much locked in his.
He certainly has a chance to be the best player in that conference, and yeah, he could. Kevin Durant has been in the Western Conference this whole time. This will be his first year in the Eastern Conference, and we'll see if he does what people said LeBron James did, and kind of like running the Eastern Conference all these years. He has a few nice contending teams there, and probably a little bit better competition than LeBron might have. But still, it's going to be interesting to see what happens there. Let's move on to Charlotte, and they get the guy who I had number one on my board, so I thought automatically they started the draft very well and drafting LaMelo Ball, who is one of the best passers in the world, and excellent ball handler, has ability to do a little bit of everything, really great rebounder. Has an incredible floater game. You just feel like he's going to eventually affect teams as a shooter, and at least he has a great deal of confidence, if even not come through yet in terms of efficiency. But yeah, he's super talented, and they need an influx of that for sure. They also draft Vernon Carey in the second round, and while I liked Xavier Tillman more than Vernon Carey, I would have had him higher on my board as well. I feel like that wasn't a terrible pick, and I just feel like Vernon Carey is going to be at least a decent offensive big man, and the fact that he lost all that weight, I wonder what that does for him defensively, just in terms of conditioning. And then obviously he jumps at way too many things and has a tough time moving his feet on the perimeter. But, I'm willing to give him a chance, and I'm not completely out on him. They get a lob threat at 42 with Nick Richards. Didn't love the pick and wasn't a huge Nick Richards guy, but athletic big man, and they need a little influx there. And then the other guy who I did have as a first-round grade, Grant Riller, and they get him at 56. I heard there were some possible injury concerns. He measured a little bit smaller in the combine, but he was one of the best guard finishers in the NCAA, if not the best. He can shoot. He can play make. His defense is a little iffy, but you just feel like he has a really great basketball IQ and is strong in the scoring threat, and somebody that they could probably use eventually to be a little bit of a spark plug off of the bench. Their roster is still kind of a mess. They signed Gordon Hayward. Yeah. They overpaid like hell. It was just, he's not that level of guy anymore, but he's still good. And he was shooting really well last year. He's a great playmaker. He can dribble, shoot. He can, take advantage of mismatches on the wing. He can play positions 2 through 4, so you can use him in a bunch of versatile lineups. PJ Washington, very promising rookie season. Miles Bridges is a guy you're hoping for a lot more in his third season in the NBA. You get Devontae Graham with a tremendous season last year. I feel like they're probably going to start LaMelo and bring Devontae off the bench, but you don't really know. Terry Rozier is another guy who, obviously he played with Gordon Hayward on those Celtics teams, but he is still somebody you're not completely sure of as far as their long-term future, and maybe used as possibly a trade chip. But I think LaMelo at least makes them a lot more exciting, and I think has them at least in the right direction. And then Gordon at least makes them better in the short term. So I think they at least got a little bit better this year, and they have the couple guys who you're going to have your team around. I think that in the next couple of years with Gordon Hayward and LaMelo Ball.
No, totally. Yeah, I still think outside of the playoffs, but I think
more
more respectable possibly this year. But yeah, we'll see. Like Gordon Hayward kind of gives him like at least a go-to guy for now, and yeah, like till LaMelo comes along. And
Yeah,
now LeVar and Michael Jordan can finally have that one-on-one game that everyone's been waiting for.
that's what you're hoping. Like that's where the real big bucks are.
Yeah.
And yeah, jeez, that wouldn't even be fun.
Oh no, that would just be brutal. They wouldn't let people watch that as a slaughtering.
Yeah.
I'm talking LeVar was going to take it to Michael Jordan. That was my take.
Yeah. Never lost.
Looking on, we have Chicago, who brought up the first, 1 through 3. Like we knew who was going 1 through 3. I mean, the order was kind of like could be up for grabs, but we kind of knew like who those guys were.
We called 1 through 3.
We called 1 through 3, and then I, as I said at number 4.
Not that was any like big deal, and a lot of people. But yeah.
As I said on pick number 4, perfect, no more. So like, yeah, Chicago comes in and really does a,
Most definitely.
He was rapidly moving up boards, but I think we had him at 9 in our final mock.
No, we haven't said it.
7,
but,
okay.
Yeah,
maybe one before we had him in.
Yeah, because I believe the Pistons rumor. So had Patrick Williams at 7. Thought about putting him at 6, and then I had even heard like he was possibly as high as Chicago. I think the deal was that he is somebody who has great size, showed a lot of athletic promise, showed some pull-up shooting ability, and then defensively was a great weak side rim protector. I guess possible versatility in guarding either forward spot. And then you see how well, like, these big forwards who can play either spot do really well in the playoffs. And I think that's kind of what Chicago was looking to. He'll have a chance to kind of come along slowly, at least currently behind like guys like, it seems like their starting lineup still is going to be like Otto Porter, Lauri Markkanen, and Wendell Carter Jr. But yeah, like they needed help on the wing, and they needed a little bit more depth as well. So yeah, Patrick Williams seems like an intriguing guy. Even showed like he didn't run it a lot, but showed some ability in the pick and roll as well. So I see that where they're coming from there, and why Patrick Williams was such an enticing pick. So yeah, I thought it was a decent pick. It might not have been who I would have chosen, but still pretty good. They get Marko Simonovic, who was a talented player for Mega Baymax, and he is likely still going to stay over. So he's kind of like a draft and stash in the second round. And then as far as free agent signings so far, they have Garrett Temple. To me, they're looking like they're staying around the same place.
Yeah, I mean,
they need to make some moves there until I believe they move up. Like obviously the coaching change in getting Billy Donovan like is interesting, but I'm yeah, like obviously they'll have a little bit more experience. So maybe they'll be a little bit better, but nothing they did this offseason is I think
get them over that
hump. Them in the immediate future, and probably still keeps them in like lottery contention next year.
No, totally. If the draft is actually held next year in person in New York, they should already be booking their tickets in hotels. Like I think they have a very good chance of
well, everybody goes to the draft, Jason.
They will. No, I think that they'll definitely. Yeah, I think they're okay, but they're still just not like over the hump. It's kind of like, your guys like Zach LaVine, and he's good, and he puts up great like good games, but it's like consistent play to like lead in the playoffs.
Yeah, Zach has never been in the playoffs.
Yeah,
that's the thing when when you think of guys who are good players, like who get brought up in all-star conversations but have never been in the playoffs, you think of Zach LaVine. Shot extremely well last year. Obviously is an incredible athlete, but defensively, a lot of issues. Kobe White was nice and had some great scoring runs himself. They're apparently higher on Lowry than Wendell Carter Jr., who I still think Wendell Carter Jr. is a very talented center. And Lowry has never really kind of lived up to his billing as this like world-class shooter yet, albeit has been a good big man shooter. But yeah, this is going to be an interesting year for Chicago. I think they at least will show a little bit more promise. But yeah, they haven't done anything this offseason to make you think that they're like playoff bound next year. But I think they'll at least have a little bit more fight.
But speaking of the lottery, of course, we move on to another team that will be meeting Chicago there in the lottery, possibly competing for a good spot. We're talking Cleveland Cavaliers.
Yeah, and they have really not done a ton. I did like the drafting of Isaac Okoro, and I thought that was an interesting pick. They had been linked to Obi Toppin. They had been linked to Danny Avdija. And Isaac is just a fantastic defender, has a little bit of playmaking ability as well, like a good ball handler, really strong, really athletic, and brings something to their team in terms of like being that secondary playmaker. They didn't have a ton of guys that could like pass well last year. And then shooting, obviously a huge caveat with him, and he just didn't seem confident at times, and his shot is nothing to really write home about, but he at least has a great work ethic and possible upside there, but can do a little bit of everything else. And then also brings like versatility as a defender, really good on ball, but can guard multiple positions, and then is a smart off-ball player as well. So one of the smarter players in the draft, really strong, and I think he's going to be able to come in and contribute. Past that, they have.
I think that's a good benefit for him getting picked there as well, because like going to Cleveland, he is going to get a lot of playing time. He's going to get a chance
to grow. Chance to get on the court immediately. Absolutely. Yeah. They obviously they have like a guy like Chetty Osman. They have Dylan Windler, hopefully is healthy, and Kevin Porter Jr. But yeah, Isaac Okoro is a guy who I think is going to get a lot of minutes there next year. They're still not going to be very good, and they don't seem like a very enticing free agent destination currently. They haven't really made a lot of moves, like Tristan Thompson obviously leaving. They have Andre Drummond and Kevin Love still. Andre Drummond, of course, took his player option. But yeah, I think they're likely to make some deals, but also likely to be in lottery, like
because like I don't know, if Kevin Love's going to come back, and then also like what's the market for either he or Andre Drummond?
Yeah,
and those are the two guys you want to move to, like free up space and just influx new people.
Well, or the other thing is you could just have them and let their contracts run out, and then you will free up space also. But yeah, to possibly get some further talent, and I'm sure that at some point they're at least going to run around the idea of trading them or try to trade them. But yeah, Cleveland right now, nothing really inspiring this offseason. They signed Damian Dotson, and that's like another wing guy who can possibly play some minutes for them. But yeah, nothing too inspiring this offseason, and I think they're staying in the bottom of the Eastern Conference.
Yeah, they're staying in that same region.
Yep.
Moving on, we got Dallas.
The Dallas Mavericks.
The Dallas Luka Doncic's.
Yeah, they did really well in the draft. Like they were one of the better drafting teams. I felt like they got some really good value. Josh Green was a player that I always liked and thought was one of the better defensive wings in the draft. Has potential as a shooter, good passer, smart player as well, works really hard. Not very good at finishing around the basket, but guessing he will likely be just spot up shooting a lot for his offense and has a chance to work on that. Already a really good athlete, so maybe he can work on that aspect of his game and at least become respectable there. And then in the second round, I thought they did some really good work. They got Tyrell Terry, who was one of the top like off-ball shooting prospects, and you kind of worried about him having a lot of on-ball responsibility. Well, he kind of goes in and will likely fill in for some of their small guards who might not be with the team. Seth Curry, of course, got traded. And then Tyler Bay is another like really good defensive prospect. Is undersized, like kind of, but is likely to play the four, and just has that explosive leaping ability, has the defensive ability and is another guy who doesn't need like a huge amount of usage and can play off ball. So yeah, they have three guys who you could see playing alongside Luka Doncic. Not to mention that they trade for another defensive piece. And yes, they lose a great shooter and offensive player and one of the small guards who played a ton with Luka last year in Seth Curry, but they bring in Josh Richardson, who is a really solid starting wing. So yeah, that should be quite a bit of fun. And I think Dallas improved defensively like almost immediately. And I just have a feeling they're going to be a better team. Kristaps Porzingis is, of course, a huge piece, and you hope that he comes back as soon as possible. But they have the centerpiece in Luka. They were the best offensive rating in NBA history last year. And then they got a little bit better defensively. They didn't necessarily get like a ton better offensively, but I think they still have a lot of those pieces around him, like Tim Hardaway Jr., Dorian Finney-Smith, Maxi Kleber. So yeah, it's I think going to be a good year for Dallas, and I have a feeling like they could go from like that, like 7 spot to
Playoff
5
like,
or something like that.
Yeah, because I think where Luka's at, like he's at an extremely high level right now. And I think the defensive increase is just going to help them. You know, you got Josh Green, can also guard, some of those guys, and you can have Luka not be having to guard necessarily the best guard as well. And then I think Tyler Bates is going to be like a good, like off the bench energy guy. And especially kind of making up for if Kristaps is there, it's again, like he can come in, give you some good minutes, give you some defensive rebounding.
Yeah.
No, I definitely like.
They moved Delon Wright, and what was that trade? Yeah, they moved Delon Wright to Detroit. Oh yeah, James Johnson. That was who they got. So yeah, another kind of defensive-minded forward, and yeah, they. I think Dallas is going to be a really interesting team.
Yeah.
And I think obviously those guys are more long-term guys. They signed Wes Iwundu, another kind of, I guess, more defensive-minded wing. He isn't necessarily bringing you a ton offensively, but yeah, with Luka is, the centerpiece of your offense. I think you're just going to have a good offense, and getting those defenders around him. And if they provide like some offensive utility, like that's going to be huge.
Yeah, that's.
I just feel like he's going to have a better year, and Dallas is going to have a better year as well.
No, they're definitely a team on the way up, but another team that's up there with them in the Western Conference, at least last year as well. Denver Nuggets finished.
Yeah. They lose some important pieces though.
Yeah, there's definitely a little bit of,
or at least an important piece.
Yeah.
And yeah, so they lose Jeremy Grant, and I don't know. I guess maybe some people thought Mason Plumlee was an important piece, but
we don't like Mason Plumlee necessarily. But again, he was someone who was playing a lot of minutes. Obviously, Jeremy Grant really was coming on in the playoffs and was a huge contributor for them.
But they signed a guy who's like kind of like Jeremy Grant and JaMychal Green. They get a nice like point guard in Facundo Campazzo. And he's an Argentinian who has been playing in Spain. And they signed Isaiah Hartenstein as well. Draft, they get Zeke Naji at the 22nd pick, and then they trade for RJ Hampton. And he's a kind of an upside flyer guy at 24, really quick. And I'm guessing Zeke won't play like a ton of minutes, but he's a guy that has a chance to be like a good like third big, and at least showed some good offensive skill last year at Arizona, and then has some mobility to maybe be like a decent defender along the or in time. And yeah, of course they re-signed Paul Millsap. They
heard Bol from his 2A.
Yeah.
He's under regular contract now. So
Michael Porter Jr., of course, hoping to play a huge role next year also. And then you're hoping that Will Barton comes back. They still have Gary Harris. They're still gonna be a really good team.
No, yeah, no,
Like,
I think
I don't feel like they've made it over the top, but I think they're probably going to stay along the same lines.
yeah, I think their core is there. Just
Yeah.
Jamal, Jokic, and Michael Porter Jr. Like those are their three guys that they're pretty special players, especially Jokic and what he can do, and Jamal the way he played.
Porter's shooting season as a rookie was absurd, and then the fact that he has that vertical athleticism, gets rebounds, finishes around the basket, like he could be really dangerous with a full year and hopefully staying healthy. Jamal Murray had an absolutely absurd playoffs as well.
Not scalable, but again, like he plays like 70%.
Like he's established himself as like an all-star guard.
Yeah.
He's really good, and you hope that he shoots more like in the playoffs than he did during the regular season. If he does that, then they're a dangerous team. Nikola Jokic, I think the best center in the NBA right now. Just so damn unique. You can run your offense through him, and he is a great player to build your team around right now. The Denver stays the same. They still stay dangerous. I still feel like they're like they may not be the third seed again, but they'll be like top four, I feel. And
they're pushing, to win a playoff series or two. Like I think the bar.
You've established that.
Yeah, they've done it the last 2 years. So I think the bar is still high for them to be in that.
Maybe not in 7 games all the time now. Maybe this year they'll do a 5 or a 6.
That would be nice.
Never seems to love those 7 games.
But some of those
they're a tough out.
But some of those Jamal Murray games, were super, super worth it because he was super exciting in the playoffs. And again, like the highest paid Canadian athlete ever, super exciting. And I think again the bar is like insanely high for him. And Jokic obviously is just like a beast. As long as he keeps staying in shape, which he did. He was. But obviously sometimes that's a question on him. But I think he'll be ready to go. And I like them a lot for next year. But again, I think like there's some teams in the Western Conference, especially at the top, that are also not going to go out easily. But speaking of Western Conference, we're going to move on to Golden State. So
we're actually we're going to go with Detroit.
Oh, Detroit. Sorry.
Yeah. So Detroit is a team where there was this meme that I sent to you, Jason, where there's a show that's quite funny called I Think You Should Leave. And he at one point says, well, I don't know whose car this is, but if nobody's going to use it, I guess I'll take it. And that was kind of Detroit's feeling of free agency so far. They're like, we don't know who these guys are, but if nobody's going to sign them, we'll take it. That seems to be their MO. They signed 2 players who were on Detroit last year, or not on Detroit, on Denver, the team alphabetically right ahead of them. And they they might start for them. Like that's the crazy part. Like obviously Jeremy Grant was starting for Denver last year, but was kind of like that 3rd or 4th guy, if that. And he seems like a solid, kind of combo forward type, big combo forward type, like we were saying with Patrick Williams, that is valuable, but not sure for $20 million. They still have Blake Griffin, of course. They signed Mason Plumlee. They signed Wayne Ellington, Jahlil Okafor. Like it was quite a group. And nobody who you're like, oh man, like this is going to make my team like significantly better. And then the draft, they actually drafted somebody very intriguing in Killian Hayes, who I think is a huge influx of talent there. And to me was the second most interesting guy in the draft behind LaMelo Ball. It's second on my board. So I love that pick. I felt like Isaiah Stewart went too high.
Yeah, see, like that was when like no one really had him until I
I,
never
th-
saw.
I think draft Twitter and people were lower on him than NBA people always were. He
I
is
liked him like at UW, but I didn't necessarily think
like
like
almost 7'5" wingspan. Always has gotten production. It's just not always like. And then of course UW didn't win very many
yeah,
games.
yeah.
He has a really tough time like loading as an athlete and processing quickly as an offensive player in terms of passing, and then defensively he was playing in that zone, and then he was just kind of like that throwback who's a little bit, even with the 7'5" wingspan, like a little bit undersized for a center, albeit very, very strong. But yeah, just not really sure where he fits in, especially with the fact of them signing like Plumlee, getting Okafor, trading for Dwayne Dedman. There's a lot of bigs there.
Yeah,
It's
I
going
don't.
to be a really interesting logjam. And then they traded for Sadiq Bey and traded Luke Kennard, who was a really good guard and shooter. I think they were probably a little bit worried about signing him to an extension long term. But yeah, like Sadiq Bey, as nice as he is a potential like combo forward and shooter and provides a little passing. I just don't think he really makes them that much better in the short term. And there might have been possible like more creative picks to make there at 19. So yeah, I didn't love the 16th, 19th pick. They get Saban Lee also. They trade for him in the second round, and really quick guard out of Vanderbilt, but struggles as a shooter. I felt like it was kind of a throwback draft a bit for Detroit, and didn't necessarily give them a ton in terms of athleticism, at least until they drafted Saban, who needs to work on the skills that a guy like Killian Hayes has. If you combine them as a player, that would be amazing. But yeah, this is a team that seems like they're definitely keeping on rebuilding.
Yeah,
And
they got to figure out an identity.
yeah, they really do. And I think Blake Griffin is likely going to be moved somewhere, hopefully to a contending team or something like that. But yeah, they Blake, yeah, he still does have player option. It's going to be tough, but yeah, it seems like Detroit got a little bit worse.
Yeah, see, I don't know how
They
this year.
already were great. They got a little bit worse, and yeah, it's they're a team that still needs a few pieces before you really see where they're going. But I think they at least got a really good one in Killian Hayes, and yeah, there's some possible upside there if he turns out to be as good as I predict he might be, which could be one of the better players from the 2020 draft.
I think I think he's got that potential, but yeah, I think it's just going to be like, how does this team even like cohesively, offensively, like run,
Yeah,
run, run a, run a.
that's gonna be tough.
But yeah, so I just there's a lot there that needs to kind of be figured out. So that's why, yeah, I would again put them back in the lottery
Yeah,
next year. But now we're going to a team that was in the lottery that
had the worst record in the league.
yeah, that generally is
after being a 5-year dynasty of a team, making 5 straight NBA finals, winning 3, having the best single season record in NBA history. Golden State had a lot of injuries.
Yeah, and they still have the core, so that's why it's
well, they
not Clay.
Ish. And as we found out day of the draft, Klay Thompson had ruptured his Achilles.
But it didn't affect their draft strategy, because again, like you would have thought Clay, maybe they'll go guard, but they stick with what a lot of people were thinking they would lean to in James Wiseman.
Their draft strategy. It did affect their season trajectory. That's what I feel. So they do trade for Kelly Oubre, but the thing is, like, he's not Klay Thompson. And the other thing is that they're going to have to pay, like, by getting Kelly Oubre, they're so far over the luxury tax. It's like absolutely absurd. And yeah, like you just wonder how well they're going to compete. Like the starting lineup looks pretty enticing. So they have Steph back. You have like Andrew Wiggins, Kelly Oubre, Draymond Green, James Wiseman. They did sign a few free agents. So they got Kent Bazemore, who is close with
Good friend of Steph Curry's as well.
and then Brad Wanamaker, who played some good backup minutes for the Celtics last year. They drafted a guy in Nico Mannion, who they were quite high on, and is a great off-ball relocator, which is one of Steph's great gifts. So he learns from the best and is a talented shooter as well. Has some on-ball ability also. So yeah, that seemed like a good pick at 48 in the second round. They get a draft and stash in Justinian Jessup, who's going to play in the NBL Australia, and played for Boise State last year. Excellent shooter, good playmaker. So somebody who hopefully will come over in a year or two. And but yeah, otherwise, like I think the Clay thing is just a huge damper. They're obviously going to be better. You just wonder what their ceiling is.
Yeah, well, it's hard to imagine Steph plays a season and they don't make the play. Like that I feel like
yeah. Well, I fully expect them to make the playoffs. It's just now you were expecting them to possibly be in like the contending.
No, totally.
And now it's like maybe they're fighting for a playoff spot. Like maybe they're like at like a 6 to 8 range. Like that's just kind of what I'm thinking. They have a lot of like Andrew Wiggins and Kelly Oubre are guys who have not been on a lot of winning teams.
No, totally. Neither one has had that. Like
Wiseman is a rookie, and has his own issues in terms of like his feel and his NBA readiness, and the fact that he hasn't played a game in over a year against a highly competitive competition. So yeah, it's going to be kind of baby steps this year with Golden State, and losing Clay was just
I think the injury is what affects.
I felt like put a kind of a damper on like the draft as a whole, but yeah, definitely it. So Golden State on the way up, but just you wonder if they're going to be in that same, like obviously they're not going to be that same team. And yeah, like this is really like a Stephen Curry year to kind of like go all out. You just wonder how well he's going to do that with two guys who need the ball as much as Kelly Oubre and Andrew Wiggins do. So he at least has a little bit of scoring kick from both of those guys. But yeah, it's going to be I obviously last year was a really tough year for Steph, but only played a few games. This might be his toughest playing season in quite a while.
Yeah, with a lot of focus and pressure, a lot of focus pressure on him. I just think like, yeah, they'll make the playoffs, but the lower part. But again, like if they get in that middle part of the 15 to 20 pick next year as well, that gives them someone else that they maybe can contribute with. Hopefully Clay coming back, because it just like you feel for the guy after his terrible ACL. And to tear your Achilles non-play, not playing, it's just sad for a guy that
he tore it while playing, but
playing, but like not in the game, but like he's someone that's like itching like crazy to get back out there, and you just like it's heartbreaking.
Of course. Moving on to the Houston Rockets, they drafted Kenyon Martin Jr. He played for IMG Prep last year. Had played for Sierra Canyon the year before. Like his father, he's an incredibly explosive athlete, but he's smaller than his father. You're not exactly sure where he fits in on an NBA floor, but if you were going to think of one of the better fits for him in like being a kind of a small ball 5 type guy, Houston certainly seems to fit that look. So he goes to maybe an ideal situation for him.
But if they kind of keep that going, under a new coaching regime,
I feel like they're going to have a relatively similar style, but yeah, we'll see.
They did bring in.
They do sign DeMarcus Cousins,
which hopefully for him, after as many heartbreaking seasons as he's had, hopefully gets a chance to actually go out and play.
Yeah, he's had rough injury luck the last number of years, and they traded for Christian Woods too, so they do get like two kind of, I guess. true bigs, but at the same time, like really kind of like talented offensive bigs who don't necessarily like fit into that box necessarily. Like, yeah, they're not completely like boxed in and like they're not lumbering. Let's just put it that way. And then Houston also signed Jayshawn Tate, who had been playing overseas the last couple of years, played for Ohio State. He's kind of like a rough, you know, I would say undersized combo forward. Sterling Brown, who's played some decent minutes with Milwaukee over the years. So, yeah, they still seem to be keeping that same relative style, albeit, you know, signing the two more like center type guys. They're going to be worse. Like I completely feel like they're going to trade Russell Westbrook and James Harden somewhere.
That's the thing that's hanging over them the whole season is like either one of those guys want to be there. The
Yeah.
answer is no. And
Yeah.
like,
They don't want to be there, and like they're hoping to be traded. They don't have a ton of leverage because they still have another year on their contract after this one. So yeah, and with Russ, I think there are 2 more years even after this. But they seem to want to be dealt and just are kind of done with that experiment that didn't last a very long time with the way they played. And it was a very fun style while it did last. But yeah, they don't end up keeping like a Trevor Ariza or anything like that, or going for a rebuild. Well, I think as soon as you saw them trade Covington, it looked like they were going to kind of rebuild. They get a draft pick from the Portland Trailblazers, but yeah, they look like they're definitely on the decline, and we will see what happens there. But yeah, it's not looking great.
yeah, no, it's like, dude, the unhappiness of two, you know.
Not looking great in the short term. I think in the long term it could turn out pretty well, and we'll see because they'll be in lottery contention. They'll have some draft capital. Yeah, I think it could be like a pretty quick turnaround for them. But yeah, just in terms of from 2019-20 to 2020-21, it's going to be tough. Indiana drafts Cassius Stanley as the 54th pick. I don't find that to be a very big deal. I know how great of an athlete he is, but I just don't think that really moves the needle for them at all. Not that you really expect that at the 54th pick. They trade for a Jason Visenberg favorite, Jalen McHugh.
I like Jalen McHugh.
Yeah.
But I mean,
so they get like 2 of the most insane vertical athletes in the NBA, just both like without the requisite like standing reach or anything to necessarily have that like jump out of the gym or anything like that. Or, you know, yeah, I don't know if either of those guys are clearing the vertex even with how high they jump.
I think Jalen McHugh has burst and athletic potential, but obviously, like, you know, obviously not going to go in and be the star player on Indiana. But Indiana has the same question that Houston does. You know, you have Victor Oladipo
and Miles Turner.
But does Victor Oladipo, you know, is he going to stick around? Like,
yeah, well, Victor Oladipo, straight up free agent, and have heard that he's very much looking to get moved somewhere. Miles Turner was rumored to be on the trading block also. Yeah, those are a couple guys who Indiana might end up losing, but otherwise they still have like a pretty nice team. Like they have a pretty good group of guys. TJ Warren was one of like the, you know,
one of the bubble guys,
and had this insane scoring stretch there. Malcolm Brogdon, great free agent signing. So yeah, they should still be pretty decent.
And hopefully Sabonis can come back healthy.
Yeah. Well, yeah. The key is Domas coming back, and it was an all-star last year. And Victor coming back to like the point of closer to where he was than what he brought last year. But yeah, I feel like Indiana is still going to be solid. They probably won't be like a top 4 team like they were last year, but they should still be like a pretty decent team, and we'll see what they do as far as acquisitions go. And yeah, it just definitely doesn't seem like Victor is there for the long run. But yeah, they went with a couple young athletes who they're hoping to make miracles. But yeah, Indiana is still like a pretty solid team, and I'm guessing
like,
a little bit
Yeah, I think a little bit. I think the playoffs are still in
Oh yeah,
tight because the East.
yeah. They have a lot of solid pieces, unless they make some moves that kind of look towards the longer term. The Clippers, they I wasn't blown over by them trading for Daniel Turu in the second round. They get Jaden Scrub also, who was a guy that I had predicted would be in the first round more as kind of like a rumor. But they're both guys who are more kind of long term. The one interesting thing is, they actually, so they have a couple. So they sign Serge Ibaka for the mid level, and he basically will replace Montrezl Harrell. And I think it's a pretty good replacement. Like, yes, for the short term, Harrell obviously a younger player, but it's pretty interesting because Serge provides the shooting that Harrell didn't have, a bit more of a defender than Harrell. Has, of course, the relationship with Kawhi Leonard.
I think that the relationship with Kawhi, I think, is a big reason.
Yeah.
Being super successful.
They were hoping. The word was that the Clippers had wanted Doc Rivers to play Zubats more than Harrell in the playoffs, and so Serge, a really interesting alternative there, should be just that solid center off the bench like he was for Toronto, and did really good things there. Luke Kennard is a lot of the same of what Landry Shamet was bringing to the table, except maybe even a better shooter and also a better playmaker. Not necessarily the defender, but I don't think Shamet was a guy that you were expecting like crazy defensive things out of either. And I think the Clippers defense in general is still going to be solid. They don't necessarily have that like point guard that I know that they have desperately wanted. But I think they're going to be right around the same level, and they're still going to be a really dangerous team. Like this is a really good group. They re-signed Marcus Morris for a pretty long term. You don't know what Kawhi and Paul George have planned for after this season.
It's always a scary
Other than turning down their player options most likely and looking for better deals. But yeah, they still have a really solid team. You're assuming that Lou Williams is back, and I think Serge Ibaka definitely eases the blow of losing like Montrez, which was something that was just going to happen.
Yeah, of course, when that went down, you're like, yeah, that's.
But yeah, I think they're still very much in the thick of things. But let's move on to the Lakers, because on paper the Lakers look better this coming year than they did last year.
I think for the Lakers staying out of the draft, and making that move to get Schroeder and giving up your draft.
Yeah, I wonder. Like that's a big thing. So, like, Danny Green is such an established wing to the point where if you play him, and even if he's not making shots, defensively he still kind of brings that spark and still kind of brings that experience where you're happy having him on the floor. And I don't know if this is necessarily like if losing some of those guys might actually hurt them, but I think at least on paper it looks pretty good.
Yeah, well,
so Marcus Gasol is a guy who I think people are prematurely saying is washed, and I think first off, he's a center that like Anthony Davis will love playing next to, and actually has playmaking ability and some ability to stretch the floor.
Yeah, I think
defense. So he's like basically, a very different player from JaVale or Dwight Howard, but still kind of like, the old school big, except with like a much higher basketball IQ.
Yeah.
And then Wes Matthews, I think, is a really nice signing and did great things with Milwaukee the year before. Both of those guys really old by NBA terms. Like that's the other thing. So you don't know if that extra year of wear it could have hurt like their possible efficiency. But yeah, still assuming that Marc Gasol is at least a playable big man for the Lakers. Bring back Marcus Morris also.
You look at the way the Lakers played in the playoffs too. It's not like Marc Gasol is going to, he might sit out. not playing a game because they're matching up Anthony
Yeah.
Davis.
Well, he's the Jokic matchup.
Yeah, he's just like
That's what we know. Yeah.
yeah, he's like the guy when
He's a situational guy, but we also know that Anthony Davis doesn't love playing center.
Yes,
Again, try and have Marc Gasol out there as much as possible.
Yeah, and I think Perez and Morris, like they have a good like front court of guys to like protect in the.
I feel like they probably start LeBron, Wes, KCP, Anthony Davis, and Marc Gasol. Have Trez and Schroeder come off the bench.
It was good, which is it was a very good spark.
Yeah. Well, the two highest vote getters for Sixth Man of the Year. So they have a little bit more of that spark off the bench that they really didn't have much of last year. And of course, we haven't even mentioned Kyle Kuzma, who we don't know exactly what he's going to be like in terms of an extension, and there have been trade rumors there, but still another like
solid. Yeah, you're bringing it off the bench that can.
So yeah, like Schroeder is at least another guy who provides some playmaking. Rondo did some really good things in the playoffs, but Schroeder has a little bit more ability to create offense for himself, and you're hoping a little bit higher shooting potential, albeit Rondo, like over his first 11 games in the playoffs, shot out of this world. But
which is something we didn't think we would say at the beginning of his career. So it's, he definitely is someone that really.
Well, shooting is something that usually kind of works over time, and gets a little better. Like shooting is something that you can definitely fix with time.
Oh, no, totally. It's not uncurable.
But yeah, like Jason Kidd, like was a guy who by the end of his career was a guy you had to worry about shooting the ball.
And so they still have, of course, Alex Caruso, which again.
Yeah. Well, he's been a really just solid guard for them, and somebody that of course love, but can play some defense, provide some playmaking, and if he's knocking down shots, that's just gravy. So yeah, he's such a ball hawk. Like that guy is always on the ball. So the Lakers on paper look better. Let's just say that they say the same. Like it's gonna be the same. You certainly hope that they're better for their sake, but yeah, it'll be interesting. But yeah, they got like on paper it does look better. But they lose a few guys. They lose like Dwight Howard, Danny Green, Dwight. By the time Dwight got to the finals, obviously wasn't doing very much. But Dwight played good minutes for them last year. JaVale played good minutes for them last year. You assume that Marc Gasol and Montrezl Harrell can more than make up for that at center. You're hoping that like Wes Matthews he's not Danny Green, but he's somewhat of like a discount Danny Green.
Yeah, like the same archetype.
Yeah. So yeah, he just always been a solid shooter. Get some defense out of him.
And actually, he's the first ever, like because his dad played for the Lakers in the '80s, and they're like the first father-son to ever play for the Lakers.
That's cool. And
for Marc Gasol, it's cool because he gets to come full circle to the team that drafted him.
Absolutely. And I think I read that Mark and Power are the first brothers to ever play for the Lakers. Yeah. Lots of
checks out. So yeah,
family things going on with the Lakers, and I'm sure LeBron is hoping that his dream of having playing next to Bronny happens in a few years. But we'll move on to the Memphis Grizzlies, who were one of my star teams on draft night. I really loved what they did. They were part of a 3-team trade that landed them Desmond Bane. They traded up to get Xavier Tillman Sr., who had played with Jaren Jackson Jr. at Michigan State. They were probably the two best seniors in the draft. Desmond Bane, unreal shooter, and had like this amazing shooting career, and can play defense, really good passer, really strong. And so the Grizz needed shooting. So that's a big key there.
Well, they made an interesting move after the draft too. Like, obviously maybe not this year, but Killian Tilly as well.
Yeah, well, Killian Tilly was a great undrafted signing, and another like smart player. Like they get 3 of Draft Twitter's favorite guys. Yeah. Killian Tilly has just had so many injuries that I think that was the only reason he went undrafted, because otherwise if he is healthy, he has a chance to get on the floor and play NBA minutes as a big 4 or 5.
Yeah, stretch 4.
Likely a 4 due to the shorter wingspan, but yeah, he can certainly play there. Great passer. He and Xavier Tillman Sr., when we did the NBA draft superlatives for Prep to Pro, they were the 2 best passers out of the short roll, the 2 best screen setters. Like they're doing a lot of the dirty work and things off of the ball. So the Grizzlies will love that if they get on the floor. So they get a couple guys who potentially could play complementary roles for them. You hope that Justice Winslow is healthy. But yeah, and then they re-signed DeAnthony Melton. As far as anything else, oh yeah, they signed Jonte Porter too to a 3-year deal. So yeah, they have a bunch of draft Twitter's favorite guys. You assume that John Morant and Jaren Jackson Jr., who last year was shooting insane clip for a 6'11" big man. You're hoping his defense gets closer to where it was projected, but still good on that end of the floor. So yeah, they're really intriguing, and they should be fighting for a playoff spot next year.
Yeah, I think that
I'm thinking around the same level, but yeah, they're still pretty good, and I think they might have gotten a little bit better, but I'm guessing somewhere around that same level.
Yeah, I think 6 or 7 to maybe being that first team out, 9, kind of again. So yeah, no, I think Memphis did really well, and then moving on, we got Miami.
A
team that definitely exceeded expectations in play last year by making to the finals, because obviously not a team people really had on the radar for the finals, and they obviously had a lot of.
That was the thing. The East was open, they were good, and Jimmy was just.
Jimmy's
and then the other thing was the evolution of Bam Adebayo.
Yeah, and he got an extension, so he's
a max extension. So he and he didn't even take a player option for that 5th year, so he's signed for Miami for quite a while. So yeah, they re-signed Goran. They have Andre Iguodala back. They have Kelly Olynyk. They re-signed Myers Leonard. They signed Avery Bradley to part of the mid-level.
And then Maurice Harkless too. So
they signed Maurice Harkless to part of the mid-level as well.
So yeah. two kind of role guys that can help.
They did lose Jay Crowder, who played a really nice role for them in the playoffs. But yeah, and they draft Precious Achiuwa, who's a really good energy guy, older for a freshman, but the guy who they kind of compare him to, just in terms of having that amazing athleticism and having some of those he's a decent ball handler. His passing feel is nowhere close to what Bam Adebayo has shown, but Bam Adebayo wasn't necessarily the passer that people didn't really see Bam being the offensive hub that he ended up becoming. So Precious, another guy they can kind of work with. You of course have the hopeful evolution of Tyler Hero also. So yeah, they should be better, in that they should be a better seed next year.
Well, I think the way they ended gives them that confidence.
Yeah. I think so. It's somewhere in the 1 to 3 range. I don't know if they'll be the best regular season team in the Eastern Conference, but yeah, they're going to be one of the best if everybody stays healthy. And Jimmy and Bam are 2 of the best players in the Eastern Conference. You hope that Goran Dragic is back in full force after suffering the plantar fasciitis. And yeah, you expect Miami to still be quite a good team. And Avery Bradley, of course, didn't play in the bubble, but was a really good first line of defense last year for the Lakers. And it's maybe expect him to step in and play a role for Miami. And then Maurice Harkless is a guy who's played a role on a few different teams so far. So yeah.
So moving on from
they were both pretty good use of that mid-level.
Moving on from Miami, we have the team that people thought was going to be the Eastern Conference.
Team, man. Damn. Yeah.
That people thought was going to be that representative for the East. We got Milwaukee.
I certainly did. I thought they were going to be the representative for the East. They have a guy who still, like all things considered, has deserved the MVP over the last couple of years, Giannis Antetokounmpo. He, they are hoping now will sign the Supermax and extend for 5 more years, but that is still yet to be determined. But they did trade for Drew Holiday, and they signed a few guys who you hope can give them a little bit of depth in DJ Augustine, Bobby Portis, Torrey Craig, and Bryn Forbes. All were playing on like near playoff level teams or playoff level teams. And yeah, they still, so Drew Holiday, you hope to be a step up. They don't end up getting Bogdan Bogdanovic, but they still maintain Brook Lopez, of course, Chris Middleton. So yeah, it'll be a little bit of a new look for them, but should still be a really solid team. You wonder how a guy like Dante DiVincenzo is going to love the fact that he was involved in like those trade rumors. They cut Ursan Ilyasova, and they drafted a couple like senior or like older shooters. They got Jordan Nwora in the second round and Sam Merrill, who did a little bit of everything for Utah State and one of the better shooters in the draft. Really good playmaker, is 24 years old. So he's a guy who you maybe expect to come in sooner than later. And even as the 60th pick, like a pretty intriguing guy. But yeah, it seems like Milwaukee is still going to be a really good team. Maybe they don't hang on to that number 1 seed though this year. So that'll be something to look out for.
Yeah, I don't see if Giannis, kind of has that chip on his shoulder after, kind of getting highly criticized in the playoffs.
Well, and the fact that so they keep Bud, and you just wonder if he's going to learn from the fact that he, like, play your guys in the playoffs, man. Like, what's going on? Like,
now's the time.
I know you only want to play like Giannis 30 minutes a game, and like the numbers he puts up during those are insane. But the guy can play more minutes. Like, and you're obviously a much better team with him on the floor, and Chris Middleton on the floor. Like, play your guys more minutes in the playoffs. You play them the minutes you do in the regular season and do very well. And then if it doesn't work in the playoffs, switch it up.
Yeah.
That's all we're asking.
That's the time.
Not that I know more than you, man, but like it just seems like a possible simple solution. So let's look towards that. And yeah, we'll see if Giannis maybe like is more confident in his jump shot. Not that that's a huge thing for him, and the fact that he's still so damn dominant around the basket. But yeah, Drew Holiday, I think, is just going to be really interesting, and is that big guard who can provide a little bit of playmaking also, and maybe a little bit more tried and true in the playoffs than Eric Bledsoe. But yeah, they trade Eric Bledsoe and George Hill, so they lost a little bit. They gained some free agents who might be able to come in and at least give them some decent minutes. But yeah, Milwaukee still looking like
they're up there in the East. And then we move on to the team that had the number 1 pick, Minnesota Timberwolves. They had ended up with 3 first-round picks.
Yeah, and well, they had the 17. They make a trade with Oklahoma City, and they get back Ricky Rubio. They trade down a little bit in the draft with what ended up being the 23rd pick and the 28th pick. They draft Leandro Barmaro with the 23rd pick, and he's a draft and stash. He's playing for FC Barcelona. And then they get Jaden McDaniels with 28. Number 1, they take Anthony Edwards, who you just assume is going to be a good scoring guard for them. And I don't know if you saw what P3 posted, but like Anthony Edwards' athleticism as far as like vertical and lateral is insane. Like it was something that we already knew. You just kind of wondered why he wasn't maybe more efficient in college with that insane athleticism. But the guy is a ridiculous athlete, so damn strong and big as a guard. So certainly a ton of potential there, and somebody who is going to get immediate minutes. They did re-sign Juancho Hernan-Gomez, Malik Beasley. So yeah, it should be interesting. you assume now with like trading for Ricky Rubio, like they'll be a little bit better. You just also wonder if they're going to make the playoffs and kind of have figured out everything in terms of their defense and shooting woes. Even though they have, like, they're when you think of their two best players, you're likely thinking of D'Angelo Russell and Karl Anthony Towns, who are both really good shooters.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's I think defense is still kind of a worry for them. Oh yeah, they ended up getting Ed Davis as well. So that's a backup big.
Old role.
Yeah. But yeah, I'm thinking they'll be a little bit better and maybe not going for like the first pick next year, but still likely in the lottery. And I don't really see them making the playoffs.
Definitely. Yeah, I still think they're a little bit. Yeah, again, it's just like that chemistry consistency. I just don't know if they can do it, especially in the West. There's so many good teams that are already pretty cohesive.
Yeah.
I think odds are against them, but I hope for them because like Karl Anthony Towns, he's been in the league a little bit. Like I hope they're trending in that right direction. That he gets a chance at the playoffs. But moving on, we have New Orleans, a team that again just missed the playoffs.
Yeah, and if they have a full season of Zion Williamson, you're assuming that they could be playoff bound. They trade for Steven Adams, and they re-signed him to like a mini extension, I guess 2 years, $35 million. So obviously you would like a center that could shoot next to Zion Williamson, but having two of the strongest players in the league play next to each other, that's going to be a lot of fun. It's going to be fun. They signed Brandon Ingram to a maximum extension or somewhere in that range that was just announced. Drafted Kyra Lewis Jr., and I thought that was a pretty cool pick. They end up trading George Hill as part of like the Steven Adams deal. Still will have Eric Bledsoe this year, and you kind of wonder what happens there. But yeah, they should be a really fun team. Like you hope Nickeil Alexander-Walker is going to be maybe contributing a little bit more this year. You still have guys like Josh Hart and Lonzo Ball taking guard spots and JJ Redick. So a lot of depth there and a lot of guys who can play minutes. But yeah, it banks on Zion hopefully being healthy and improving.
Yeah, just taking another
player that you can build around.
Yeah, taking another step. I think again, like they look a little bit better, but I think they're still in that same swing of like they could be one of the last teams in, or they could be one of the first few.
Yeah, it'll rely a large portion on health.
Yeah,
of Zion Williamson. That's it.
100%. Yeah,
that's who it keys on. If Zion is healthy, this is going to be a team. And yeah, it should be a couple fun pieces, and their defense should be pretty interesting. They of course lose Derek Favors, but having a center like Steven Adams, and then Eric Bledsoe, second team all defense. He's not Drew Holiday, but he's still a pretty good guard and athletic and can provide some playmaking, some shooting. They'll be one of the more fun teams to watch. I still feel that way. The New York Knicks, some interesting choices. So Obi Toppin is an incredible offensive talent.
And he's there. He was there at number 8. Like that was. I think that was.
On most draft boards, he probably would have been higher. I think on my draft board, I probably had him maybe even a little bit lower. But he certainly, I think certainly like that was around his range. You just kind of wonder where everything fits in. Like you still have a guy like Julius Randle, and you wonder how all the pieces fit on New York. But yeah, Obi's a good passer, and then also like the fact that Obi playing next to like Mitchell Robinson, like they're both guys who kind of excel around the hoop and as lob threats. So you wonder if that really works with them next to each other. Still really looking for that primary initiator. And they didn't, I don't know if that would have been there at 8, but they still don't have that. And then Emmanuel Quickly was obviously a really good player for Kentucky, but it seemed like a bit of a stretch at number 25. He shot really well. He works really hard, but you just wonder his on-ball utility in the NBA. And I'm not expecting him to take a huge role right away. And then they signed Alec Burks, who can kind of get his own shot, but is another scoring type wing who does some of the same things as like RJ Barrett. And then Austin Rivers, another like scoring, like basically like a more established Alonzo Trier, who has a little bit more playmaking ability, but not much.
But they don't have an initiator for some of the like the guys.
Yeah.
Like at the end of
those are both like scoring guys. And then Nerlens Noel, another like defensive-minded big. Obviously a smarter defender than Mitchell Robinson, but not necessarily as exciting of one, especially in terms of game around the basket. So yeah, the Knicks.
I see them back. Yeah, they're back in the lottery, and
I think they're one of the worst teams in the league. Like yeah.
I think again, like there's log jams of certain positions, but like there's no one.
You hope RJ improves, but it's going to be a tough circumstance for him. Like he has his work cut out for him, and you just wonder how all those pieces fit together. I did like the fact that they let some of the players that they had, last year go. Like like let Bobby Portis go. I guess Taj Gibson can go and find a different team also. They had that huge logjam of bigs, but they still kind of do. And it's just it's going to be obviously a youth movement going on there, but they still really need that guy that you build the team around. And
the Knicks will do what they do best. They'll just kind of like be mediocre and hope for tomorrow will be a better day, which seems to be
really are hoping that they get Cade Cunningham.
Oh no, totally. They do they do the combination of both. Like they hope for the draft, and then they also clear cap space, like hoping for that free agent. And then like neither scenarios happen. But
Oklahoma City, team that's getting worse. Like they just set up to do that. They trade Chris Paul. That was just something they were planning to do. And what they have done is they've gotten every draft pick in the NBA draft.
Oh yeah, no, totally. They're planning to
for the future. And so that's pretty cool. They trade up and draft a guy that it was rumored they were looking at, and Alexei Pokusevsky. He's one of the better upside plays in the draft. I think he's coming over right away, but still incredibly skinny at 7 feet, but can shoot off of movement.
Has a skill set that you love to see.
Yeah, incredible skill set for a 7-footer and athleticism. They chose Europeans with all three of the draft picks they end up keeping. So they get Pokusevsky. They have Theo Maledon, who played for Asvel, and I heard wanted to come over right away also. Then they get Vic Krejci at the 37th pick, was a player that I don't think we had ever talked about on here, but plays for Zaragoza in Spain, had torn his ACL, so he's definitely a draft and stash guy and somebody they hope can maybe recuperate over the next few years. Kind of like a taller, sort of like a combo guard, and a good athlete who struggles shooting. But he's a draft and stash guy. And the only free agent signing so far has been Frank Jackson from New Orleans, who's like a good little guard, kind of scoring guard off the bench.
And they get to take on Al Horford's contract.
They get to take on Al Horford's contract, but I think they'll still have just a ton of cap space.
Oh, no, totally.
And Al only has like 3 more years left after this one, or 2 more after this. And then they also got George Hill. So, yeah, we'll see what they end up doing with him. I'm guessing just another solid guard to play next to Shea if they intend on keeping him. And they trade for TJ Leaf, Darius Miller. They're trying to tank, and they're.
Yeah, I think they were a team that was
get a guy who goes to Oklahoma State, and or just another really solid draft pick to come in and rebuild.
Yeah, they're a team that's definitely was in the playoffs.
It's a good strategy.
the team that was in the playoffs, and
They're
everything.
going to be bad for a few years.
And then everything that made them exciting about making the playoffs, Chris Paul and all, yeah, they're gone. Steven Adams, it's like, so yeah, they definitely just,
yeah,
they just blew it up, and like I like Shea.
They kept Shea, and
he's gonna get some good burn, and this is gonna be a chance for him to definitely get a lot of playing time, and learn and grow a lot. But I think, yeah, definitely out of the playoff picture this year. Like I have a hard time envisioning the scenario in which they like get to the playoffs, let alone like get to the playoffs and do something.
Yeah.
So yeah, definitely.
Orlando, they end up drafting Cole Anthony. I thought it was a great pick at 15. A guy who was definitely a little bit higher on my board. He just seems to be a really nice player to come in and score for them. Play sometime at the point. That's not, ideally you'd like a kind of a more primary ball handler next to him, but he still is a guy who can pass, can really shoot, has a great pull-up game. You hope that maybe having a more open court can help him in terms of getting to the basket as compared to North Carolina. But yeah, he'll at least give a shooting dimension that Orlando was in desperate need for. Probably playing at times next to Markelle Fultz. They signed Dwayne Bacon, who is just another kind of scoring guard. I think that Orlando is, again, likely to be somewhere in that same vicinity, but maybe even possibly misses the playoffs. Jonathan Isaac, of course, hurt for the season, you're thinking. But yeah, they still have their relative core together, but yeah, you just kind of wonder maybe if they want to go into like full rebuild mode and look for that player you really want to build a contending team around. But it seems like Cole Anthony was at least a nice start there in terms of a compliment.
I think he'll definitely show up, and he'll play well and definitely get some scoring firepower there. But yeah, I think again they're on the outside looking in for the playoffs this year.
Yeah. Philadelphia had a great draft, I felt. Tyrese Maxey was, I feel, a steal at 21, and somebody who's potential 3-level scorer. Didn't shoot exceptionally well for Kentucky last year, like as cumulative on the season, but he showed flashes and has showed flashes throughout his high school career. He just has incredible balance and should be really good next to Ben Simmons. So that was a guy who just seemed like a great fit for Philadelphia. And then they got a couple other like guard scorers. You're hoping Danny Green gets closer to where he was with Toronto as opposed to the Lakers last year, but still like a good shooter and defender and somebody who seems to kind of fit along the lines of what Philadelphia looks for in complementary wing. And then Seth Curry, great shooter. So you're assuming that it looks like the starting lineup might be Ben Simmons, Seth Curry, Danny Green, Tobias Harris, and Joel Embiid, which at least in terms of like a lineup synergy seems to fit a little bit better than what they had last year. You just still kind of wonder. Yeah, so as far as free agent signings go, they signed Dwight Howard as a backup center. They got Ryan Brokoff, just as, kind of like a shooter off the bench, but you're not expecting him to play huge minutes. And yeah, they also traded for Tony Bradley. There are 2 other draft picks, Isaiah Joe, like huge shooting potential there, and then some, decent off-ball defense. And then Paul Reed was like Stocks monster, and like both of those guys were rumored to be possible like end of first round guys, and they got them later in the second round. So yeah, I thought Philadelphia had a really good value draft, and I'm guessing they'll probably be along the same lines, but new coach, new system, who knows? With Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid, I want to run it out for 1 year. You kind of change it around a little bit in terms of the lineup.
Well, let Doc Rivers have a year and have a chance.
Yeah. Well, he's going to get more than 1 year.
No, he's going to get more than 1 year, but a chance with Ben Simmons, Joel Embiid.
Yeah.
Then maybe make that decision like how they want to go. Also, Seth Curry is also in this position where it's like he better shoot the ball well because his father-in-law is his coach. So definitely, you don't want those meals to be very awkward. You better be performing well so you can talk about the positivity at work, not what.
Well, he coached Paul George last year, and we saw how that worked. But
Well, that's
yeah,
not the son-in-law. That was his prospective son-in-law that didn't work out.
exactly. That's even worse.
Even more awkward. But again,
He
Seth
probably liked Seth.
to see him at the barbecue, like. So yeah, definitely show out there.
So yeah, Phoenix, they're going to be a better team, but that draft pick, that was
That was a head scratcher for sure.
like that was the first draft pick that had you saying like, damn, like that was a lot higher than you expected him to go. Even though he was maybe even like he was rumored to go like 13, 14 to New Orleans or to Boston. But yeah, him going 10 was kind of a shocker.
I just think there are other good guys on the board, for what.
Yeah. But as we saw last year, like, they saw Cam Johnson. You thought they were better guys.
We said the same thing about
the guy that they wanted.
Yeah,
and,
we said the same thing
saw something with Jalen Smith that they wanted. He's likely going to be like a backup big for them, which I guess is fine as a rookie initially. And you just hope he maybe turns into more, and maybe they just really see the shooting upside with him. But yeah, it seemed like there would have been some really good fits left on the board. So that was kind of a bummer. So yeah, not my favorite pick of the draft. And then free agent signings, they get Jay Crowder.
I think that's a good contributor.
Some good depth there. And like a guy who can possibly play 4 next to like Mikal Bridges and even play with like Cam Johnson at times. And obviously played a nice role for Miami. Chris Paul, of course, is who you're really banking on, like making them that playoff team. So yeah, with Houston out of the playoffs, Phoenix seems like the most likely to step right in there. Not that they have Chris Paul, Devin Booker. You have hopefully DeAndre Ayton for a full season, Mikal Bridges, Cam Johnson, Dario Saric is back. They should be at least a pretty good team. Also signed Langston Galloway, Etuan Moore, Damian Jones. So yeah, they have a little bit of backup depth. You lose Aaron Baines, who was a really nice backup center for them last year, but yeah, they still have that like kind of, I don't know, I guess not all of the core of last year's bubble run with Ricky Rubio gone, but you assume Chris Paul goes in there and it gets a little better.
Yeah, and I feel like Devin Booker and those guys have to, like the remaining players like have to feel good about how they finish that season.
Yeah, and then you get Chris Paul. And Chris Paul.
No, totally. And I think Chris
Paul NBA and
Chris Paul and playoffs go together. And I think
a couple more years being at like an all-star level.
Yeah, and I think with the West, again, you have like Houston, Oklahoma City moving out. This is perfect prime time for Phoenix to really come in. And I think with Chris Paul too, that always just it gives you like this bump that hopefully like helps Devin Booker and DeAndre Ayton and these guys kind of mature a little bit.
He can run an offense. He is amazing around the basket too.
And Devin Booker's just a great.
Devin Booker's just become this insane offensive hub.
Yeah, which is just like
DeAndre has shown some really good flashes too. So yeah, having that kind of big three. Yeah, I'm assuming that they are probably in like maybe like possible 5 or 6 at low 7 or 8. Portland looks like they've had themselves a pretty damn good offseason.
I think I said it to you.
I'm cautiously optimistic.
I think I said it to you, like yesterday, and I was actually talking to someone else about it too. It's like I think the Blazers had a great offseason for who the Blazers are and can be. I mean, they're not a free agent destination, so it's not like Anthony Davis.
But game like Derrick Jones Jr.
Yeah, so I think like building in, like for the Blazers, it was just building in positions that they really needed. I think
Harry Giles had some decent flashes with the Kings last year, and they signed him for like a minimum deal. So that's another guy who can possibly play some minutes at the 4 or 5. And then just getting Ennis back, I think, is going to be a fan favorite, and he's probably not going to play huge minutes, but it's like the Nurk insurance again, yeah. And a guy who loved playing here also. Rocco is a step up on even Trevor Ariza, so that's nice. And Oh, Trevor Ariza also with Oklahoma City, I should have mentioned before. But yeah, you wonder if that's going to be his final destination, although he's been traded like 17 times this offseason. Now, yeah, Robert Covington. So you're thinking the Blazers starters likely going to be Damian Lillard, CJ McCollum. I call Rocco the three, but can play 3 or 4. Melo, you want playing the 4 more than likely, and then Yusuf Nurkic. Then you have like Derek Jones who can play either 3 or 4. Yeah, a little versatility there.
Yeah, and like, again, like off the bench, like some shooting because like the way Gary Trent finished.
Yeah, Gary Trent finished the season very
super strong. So you like what you're seeing there. Like I definitely think the Blazers are, in a great position for what they can acquire. And so I definitely think playoffs definitely. Obviously, it's the Blazers, so you never.
Yeah. You hope everybody stays healthy, and then re-signing Rodney Hood, I think, was fine, considering if they would have lost him, then
considering they didn't have him in the
playoffs, had that depth.
They didn't have him at all last year, because he was also, I think, again, like that's a nice addition. Jared Jones Jr. again, like wing defense. I think Melo obviously, has his limitations, but again, like somebody I enjoy seeing in a Blazers uniform, and I'm happy he did come back.
Yeah, and for the minimum. Yeah. So really nothing to lose. They draft CJ Ellaby, who was a big time offensive player. Even showed some possible defensive flashes. Likely a guy who spends some. You don't know if there's a G League. Is a guy who will be brought along developmentally, but still has shooting flashes, has some on-ball skills. So yeah, he's I think a worthwhile gamble in the second round. You're hoping Anthony Simons and Nasir Little kind of have stepped up in their second and third year, or third and second year respectively. But yeah, it just seems like the Blazers, like 8 or 9 deep, looks really good, especially when you add in Zach Collins.
Yeah, like with Collins getting help,
I'm thinking Blazers, like, if this team stays healthy, is looking like a 4-5, possibly even 3 seed over Denver. But yeah, somewhere in that range, and it should be really nice having the forward depth that they seem to be missing a lot of last year.
Well, that was the key. Yeah, they hit on a big gaping hole in the playoffs, and they've addressed it, which I think is just which is big. And again, like with the resources and capability that they have to draw in talent. So I love it. I hope they can get back to where they were in the conference finals 2 years ago. But we shall see. Obviously, very super competitive out in the West.
Sacramento Kings. They have they drafted Tyrese Halliburton, which was like right. I felt like the NBA, at least from what I had heard and what the draft experts seemed to be saying, was higher on Tyrese than draft Twitter and I were. I would have him right around that range, and I thought that was a good pick by Sacramento, and certainly is a guy who I think kind of excels next to De'Aaron Fox in his best case scenario. Is a guy who doesn't necessarily like need to be on ball, and so you can still let De'Aaron Fox do that, and then he's better as like kind of like a catch and shoot type player. Also is a fantastic passer though, and you kind of wonder about if De'Aaron can maybe like move up and guard the 2 and have Tyrese guard the 1. You're maybe slightly worried about that, but still it seems to be like a really solid pick there. And then they got Jamias Ramsey, who's kind of like one of those upside guys who you hope figures out things in terms of instincts on both ends of the floor, but shot really well from 3, and then has some athleticism and effort. So yeah, that was their kind of second round gamble. Otherwise, they haven't really done too much.
Yeah, and, they're still Sacramento.
Right now, they lose Bogdanovic. Like that's been their one like move really. You wonder who they add. Like you don't think they'll add like Hassan Whiteside because his history there. But yeah, it just it's kind of a question mark as to just how good they'll be. You still like, because the past couple of years they've kind of fought for like that last playoff seed.
Oh yeah, they're
They still have like some good young guys, and they've had a lot of injury issues also. But yeah, it seems like they're kind of stuck in purgatory for right now. But Tyrese was a nice pickup. It just seems like some of the other teams have kind of picked up a little bit more, and you just wonder what Sacramento is planning to do.
They're gonna go to that 4-on-5 offense that they've always taught, where they do the 4 defenders with the one guy under the other team's basket. They're gonna do it one day.
Sure.
As long as he's in charge.
San Antonio, kind of like the same thing there. Like, so, you had DeMar DeRozan. The rumors were that San Antonio was going to make this big deal with like whatever. Hasn't happened yet. So DeMar DeRozan, LaMarcus Aldridge, still Spurs. And then I really liked what they did in the draft. I thought Devin Vassell was great value at the 11th pick. I even liked Trey Jones as
I like what he can bring over time, like some seasoning right now. But yeah.
We've talked quite a bit about both of them, so really like those value picks. Especially, they needed the wing help, and Vassell provides that, and was this fantastic team defender at Florida State, showed the shooting flashes. And yeah, he just looks like he could be a really good wing utility guy. And then Trey Jones just looks like he can run a second team offense quite well. They have all these promising guards also in Derek White, DeJounte Murray, many others. I like Lonnie Walker. Yeah, so they already have like a bit of that youth movement, but yeah, they should be a little bit worse, you would feel.
They're kind of in flux of like.
Yeah. Like it seems like they're kind of headed towards. They've been headed towards rebuild for a while, but yeah, they're looking to find those next like guys to really build around, like the people who will be the star players on the team. And right now they have just a lot of really promising complementary options. They re-signed Jakob Poeltl to 3-year, $27 million. Nothing too much else to report from the Spurs. Keldon Johnson was a promising rookie also. They have like some nice guys who you're willing to bet on, but yeah, they should be a little bit worse this upcoming year. And that moves on to Toronto, and Toronto, as I should say, is somebody from there. I liked both of the guys they drafted. I thought they were really good value picks also. Everybody just feels like they're just going to raptorize whoever they draft, but
it's funny,
they drafted a couple guys who have a chance to be role guys based on their skill set. Malachi Flynn, with excellent pick and roll player, was the Mountain West Player of the Year and Defensive Player of the Year. Just really smart, has shooting ability, should like right off the bat like be able to at least play like some third point guard minutes for them. Jalen Harris is just a really good guy to take a stab at. I'm sure somebody they would have loved to have on the 905, but is also a guy who's just really good scorer, has some shooting potential, has some athleticism, was really good for Nevada last year. So those were two good picks there, but they lose a few guys. Of course, they lose Marc Gasol, Serge Ibaka, huge big guys for them. And yeah, it seems like, albeit they do sign like two of the better centers that were left in Aaron Baines and Alex Len, but yeah, it looks like they. Oh, and they also signed DeAndre Bembry, who's was like played some decent wing minutes for Atlanta and has some nice like playmaking ability. But yeah, you feel like they'll still be good, but I'm not sure like second seed good.
Yeah, it's hard to say like without Gasol, Ibaka. I think those are and yeah, like Siakam hopefully takes another step forward. That'd be ideal, but I think it was good getting that
shooting and then just sticking to being better around the basket in the playoffs, like that was a huge thing for him.
I think bringing back Fred VanVleet, which is something, because again, like I saw that Malachi Flynn pick on
a fantastic shooter
on draft night. I was like, oh, but again, I think Malachi Flynn's still going to be good at. But I love.
Yeah,
Fred
he has some of those similar tools to Fred. But yeah, Fred,
the two guards, with Kyle Lowry.
Yeah, Fred's that established guy, was like out of this world as a shooter last year, and the Raptors have always kind of had a tough time signing free agents, like
always, yeah,
big name free agents, like who aren't already with the team. So the fact that they signed Fred, I think, was the right move to make, and they should still be good. And then, of course, signing Chris Boucher was a wonderful thing, and his per 36-minute numbers last year, his analytics, like this is a guy who I think is going to get quite a few more minutes this upcoming season, and looks like a rotation guy on a good team.
And he's also it's the highest paid Canadian player that was undrafted.
Yeah,
with his contract, and then Fred VanVleet with his $85 million is also the highest paid undrafted player ever.
Yeah, I can find nothing to dispute that fact.
No, which I just think is awesome because he's just a dude that just proved it. He earned it. Like my advice to him was like, enjoy every penny because you've earned this.
Yeah.
And so
Utah is our next team. I just feel like they're just going to be worse. I didn't really like what they did in the draft. Udoka Azubuike, like, is somebody I get. Like, he was an excellent finisher next to the basket, was one of the better like rim protectors last year in the NCAA, and really improved his mobility there, but still is pretty slow laterally, and of course doesn't provide any shooting. Not that he's not fantastic around the basket due to his vertical athleticism and being enormous, but it just seems like a guy who is going to take a while to get used to the NBA speed. Elijah Hughes wasn't somebody that I really loved as a second-round pick. Just kind of like that shooting wing from Syracuse, and you're always kind of wondering how well players from Syracuse defend in the NBA after coming from the zone. And then they do sign Derek Favors, who has obviously quite a bit of experience in Utah, and is that good alternative to like a Rudy Gobert if he gets hurt. I just feel like Utah is going to do something, and they're not going to be as good as they were the year before.
I think Donovan Mitchell's a great, and obviously like he was going, but again, I think like Gobert.
He went off in that playoff series. He really
Gobert
did.
Kind of presents a bit of a blocker for him as well. Like they need to do a few things to kind of make this team a little bit more feasible.
Yeah, and then you still have Mike Conley. They re-signed Jordan Clarkson to a longer-term deal. But yeah, even with him, like he's a really good scorer. But then after a while, like defensively, you just wonder if he's not maybe giving up as much as he's putting in. Like on paper, they don't look much worse. But I just feel like chemistry-wise, I still feel like something's up there. And I'm not really sure about it. I don't think they'll be much worse, and I still see them as a playoff team. But I feel like they could eventually move like a Rudy Gobert or like a Donovan Mitchell. I
think something's gotta give at some point. Like it's just, but yeah, the current formula is not gonna, the status quo isn't going. But I think playoffs. But again, towards that back end.
Yeah. And I feel like they're further down the Western Conference this upcoming year. And then Washington, I liked what they did in the draft. Like I actually liked both their picks. I thought Denny Avdia was a nice pick at 9. Of course, brings a little bit of that playmaking ability, but also really good off ball, smart player, has shooting potential, even if he hasn't really shown it at a consistent level as of yet. But he should be like at least a nice utility wing who could do a little bit of everything, has some defensive intelligence as well. And then Cassius Winston is one of the better like shooting point guards that was in the draft, has some excellent playmaking ability, also a worthwhile gamble at 53 to eventually, be like a second or third guard. And they do have John Wall coming back. They do have Bradley Beal. You feel like they might be better, but you just wonder how much, and then wonder what they're going to do. It seems like John Wall, as much as they say John Wall is cool and everything's going fine, like you hear the John Wall and Russell Westbrook rumors. You wonder if that makes either team better.
That's the thing. I think Washington's in the same situation as Houston, where they have two really good players. They have John Wall, Bradley Beal. Neither one probably wants to still be there.
Yeah.
So you got to like figure.
Because they still have all those young pieces. They didn't address the needed center. So you're wondering if they've been going for like character guys too. So like you wonder if they go for like a Whiteside or like anything like that. They get a wing guy who you could say that they kind of had a need for, but it's just still seem to be missing some pieces towards contending, and it's not a team that I think you're very high on going into next year.
I mean, best case scenario for them is being in the situation they're in last year, where they were invited to the bubble, but they literally had no chance of making the playoffs. I think that's their best case scenario. Is like,
and like on paper they look better, but you wonder how much better.
And again, like John Wall's, hopefully like his workout videos, like he's back and healthy, but it's like, again, do you want to be there? And then that kind of affects the whole dynamic.
It's still like he and Russ have like so many of the same issues. Like that's
totally. And you're not neither team's solving the problem. You're just taking one big salary and moving it around.
Yeah. Like giving it a new home, and you just wonder with Westbrook, like there are so few alternatives to. I think teams that want him and feel like they have that much more of an upside by trading for him. And I think it's the same thing with Wall.
Yeah.
Wall has the 2022-23 option for $47 million. It's a player option. Think he's going to take it?
Yeah, totally.
You're stuck to him for quite a while, and I think that kind of inhibits how you build your team, unless you just want to be in the lottery and hope to maybe like get a few guys around him. But I don't think John Wall wants to be in that situation.
No, totally.
We'll really hear. Washington, I don't think is done, but it's they got a couple nice draft picks. I just don't think it really moves the needle as far as next season's concerned.
Totally, but I think looking at all these teams, I think we are definitely setting up for a pretty exciting season. Like I'm looking. Yeah. I'm just looking forward to this.
I think a pretty wide open season. Like as good as the Lakers off season looks on paper, there could still be so many things that happen.
Their season's a marathon.
The Clippers did a good job. The Blazers, Milwaukee will have that different look. Miami still looks pretty dangerous. It's going to be pretty wide open. Denver, of course, with their young pieces, if they stay healthy.
Well, I think shorter too. You're gonna see a lot less probably LeBron in the early parts of the regular season. Kawhi maybe as well. Kind of just pacing themselves. So it's like, it's gonna be just a very interesting how this is gonna play out. But again, I think there's some great scenarios. I think just in my head hypotheticals, some great matchups to look forward to during the regular season, during the playoffs as well. But that's our thoughts on how the teams are looking post draft. Free agency trades. Let us know how your team's doing. How are you feeling about your team?
How are you feeling about your team? The 5 All-Stars from the 2020 draft, has that changed anywhere with as far as where players were drafted, or has your board changed based on team fit? Let us know.
Definitely. That's what the comments are for. You can also email us viselandpod@gmail.com. Follow us on Twitter @Viseland. I am @Visenberg on every social media platform you can find in the world. He is @NBA Draft Mikey V. Thank you guys so much for listening. Don't forget, if you're on YouTube, you got to smash the subscribe button. Don't just click it.
Smash it. Smash the like button. Smash the
subscribe button. Great keyboard on the subscribe. And then, thank you.
Keyboard like Busta Rhymes breaks his neck.
Yeah, so we super appreciate you guys taking the time to listen. If you could write us a review as well, that's awesome on any platform. But thank you guys for taking the time, and we'll see you guys next week.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Have a great Thanksgiving.